West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est long, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire.
This week, the Trump administration rolled out sweeping changes to the test that immigrants must take to become naturalized United States citizens. The test is longer and harder. In the previous exam, hopeful American citizens were asked up to 10 questions during an interview and had to answer 6 correctly to pass. Now the passing score has changed to 12 out of 20. According to the New York Times, it's also more complex, eliminating simple geography and adding dozens of possible questions, some nuanced and involving complex phrasing that could trip up applicants who do not consider them carefully. Here are 3 examples of the new questions. Who does a U.S. Senator represent? The previous answer was all people of the state. The new test answer is citizens of the state. Second question, why does each state have 2 senators? Acceptable answers are equal representation, meaning for small states, or the Great Compromise, meaning the Connecticut Compromise. How about this one? What are 3 rights of everyone living in the United States? Some of the accepted answers include freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of religion. Interestingly, not listed, the rights to counsel, due process, equal protection, and freedom from cruel and unusual punishment or unreasonable search and seizure. The test changes could be overturned by incoming President-elect Joe Biden, but it would take months. Immigration organizations are warning that this is too much and will make it harder for poor immigrants from non-English-speaking countries and suppress the number of citizens who vote. Speaking to the Times, the executive director of the Immigrant Legal Resource Center in San Francisco said this: it's a last-ditch effort on their way out the door for the administration to keep people from realizing their dreams of becoming citizens. There's no legal reason, no regulatory reason to do this. The U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services says the current pass rate for the exam is 91%. Last year, when the agency announced the exam, Ken Cuccinelli, serving as the acting director, defended the move, saying, updating, maintaining, and improving a test that is current and relevant is our responsibility as an agency in order to help potential new citizens fully understand the meaning of U.S. citizenship and the values that unite all Americans. It reminds me that 2 years ago, I delivered a commencement address at Delaware Valley University, and my focus was on civics education. In fact, I opened the address by telling the graduates that I had one last test for them before they went out into the real world. No grading, only 4 questions, and each was a question on the old version of the naturalization test. First, the House of Representatives has how many voting members? 435. Second, what do we call the first 10 amendments to the Constitution? That would be the Bill of Rights. Third, how many justices are on the Supreme Court of the United States? Always remember, switch in time, save 9. And fourth, on what day was the Declaration of Independence adopted? July 4, 1776. In fiscal year 2019, 834,000 people became new citizens by answering questions like those. So I asked the grads for a show of hands how many had gotten all correct, and many did. My point was that most of us bypassed this process because our citizenship was conferred with birth in this country. But if your citizenship were dependent upon your knowledge of our government, would you make the cut? If not, you've got a lot of company. According to an August survey by the Annenberg Public Policy Center of the University of Pennsylvania, Americans' knowledge of civics has improved this year during the pandemic, but that's still not saying much. Only 51% of Americans could name all three branches of government, up from 39% last year. More than half of Americans, 54%, know that a 5-4 Supreme Court decision holds the same weight as a 9-0 decision. And remember how that new question on the naturalization test asks hopeful citizens to name 3 rights given to U.S. citizens? Well, 19% of Americans couldn't name a single First Amendment right. It's easy to strengthen a test for newcomers. The real question is not how we quiz the understanding of those seeking naturalization, but how do we raise the civic knowledge of those who are citizens by virtue of their birth? In June, I moderated a virtual fireside chat with Secretary Leon Panetta and Ambassador Susan Rice for the National Commission on Military, National, and Public Service. The commission had just released its final report, Inspired to Serve, to Congress, to the President, and the American public with 164 specific recommendations to build a culture of service in America. They did great work. In the executive summary, they made this point. In the course of its work, the Commission identified a major flaw in the American educational system: the lack of exposure to high-quality civic education for students throughout much of the nation. Fixing that's the hard part.
It is Monday, the 7th of December of 2020, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is River City Hash Mondays, a day that will live in infamy. Yes, it's that day, folks. It's Pearl Harbor Day. Some of us know that, and I wonder how many Americans that wear red hats know what that is. I wonder. Is anybody going to ask him? I'm not. I'm trying to stay as far away as possible. You don't know what they're capable of, especially with your back turned. You know the axiom, never turn your back on the ocean. Never do it. You don't know what's going to sneak up behind you. Little sneaker waves. That's why they call them sneaker waves. Do not turn your back on the ocean. It is a given. Same thing applies to maggots. Do not turn your back on them. Not one bit. Yeah, they're at the Secretary of State's office or house, her residence, with her 4-year-old son in Michigan, the Secretary of State in Michigan. Dozens, the newspaper reports, dozens of armed individuals. Oh, really? You mean right-wing seditious brown shirts? Shock troops? You mean that? Individuals, please. Anyway, they have bullhorns and are screaming obscenities to overturn the election. What? I swear to God, if it was Antifa, not only would it be 24/7 on Fox, but the appropriate constabulary would have called out the SWAT team to bust some heads. Okay. I guess they can get away with that now, huh? Defund the police. I think they're going to need to be dismantled and built again, maybe. Okay, it's been one of those weekends, hasn't it? And River City Hash Mondays is the day that we really put it all together because, wow, there's always so much over the weekend. Always so much. Yep. Rudy's got COVID, like we were shocked about that news. I mean, it's been a suspicion since even before the landscaping gig. And all that sweating, that flop sweat. I mean, you didn't want to be around that guy because even if he didn't have COVID, you did not want to catch whatever it was that he had. Still does. So I am joking a bit about getting COVID, and no one wants to get it. And, as much of a ogre or whatnot that Rudy is, this is an insidious disease. And if it hits you hard, it's not good. And I don't want to see anyone suffer, even my worst enemy. I don't want to see the animal that was trying to eat me suffer. If I happen to prevail in the situation like that. I'm just saying. So, we warned them. I know we've warned them. We could say we told you so, and they never listen. And now apparently Matthew McConaughey is out there saying that leftists are too arrogant. Are you kidding me? Too arrogant over what? F your feelings? We got 4 years of that. Why don't you talk about arrogance on the other side? The arrogance of ignorance. How about that? Arrogant. Leftists are arrogant, and that's why we have to put up with this right-wing BS. That's pretty rich coming from a rich guy, he knows all about arrogance, doesn't he? I haven't met one yet that wasn't really. Though not to color all, quote, rich people as arrogant buffoons. Some are not buffoons. No, and there are some who actually have a balanced life and a level of modesty, self-reflection that doesn't belie, money doesn't give anybody the secret of the universe. I have to admit, there are certain people of the, shall we say, low information type that have a lot of money who really think that they do have the secret to the universe, because how did they get money? Because money has nothing to do with intelligence or really anything. I would even say that the accumulation of money has little to do with how hard you work. There's all sorts of people who work hard who are not remunerated in the proper fashion. There's other people who hardly work and make the big bucks. So, just by dint of the fact that one has money doesn't necessarily mean that they know it all. Though, I have to admit, by and large, they do think they know it all. And even more. They think they even know more than all there is to know. Because then we start going on and on about their faith. So it looks like the Supreme Court is in a war against science and reason now. The religious right, the 6-3 majority on the Supreme Court, is now in a war on science and reason. So I guess we won't be going to the Supreme Court for any redress of our grievances now, will we? We're going to have to avoid that until a few people like Alito and Thomas, and I don't know, maybe a couple of others decide, well, maybe this mortal coil might want to enjoy itself without the constraints of this thing, this chamber. And we can only hope that happens quick. Otherwise, I think we need to balance the courts. Talking about defunding the police, we're not talking about defunding the police. Police reform is not defunding the police. Even dismantling the police is not dismantling the police. It's dismantling certain structures that allow these, I don't know, I would call them scofflaws to get the materiel to aid an army. Yeah, that's right. We're going to supply an army right here in rural America in our little 5-man police department. We got a tank. So it's all part of a whole. We're getting rid of a mobster who wrapped himself in the flag of law and order. And what does law and order do? They go, hey, man, yeah, maybe we can get some of that. And I think maybe they need to stop. So we need to balance the courts. We need to reform the police. Oh, good news. I keep getting hit hard by people. Oh, Biden, he's such a piece of shit. Biden is a piece of shit. From leftists. Progressive leftists. Oh, okay. Why won't he? We want Medicare for all. We want Medicare for all. Why won't he just come out and say we want Medicare for all? So, Joe has Becerra, the Attorney General of California, Xavier Becerra, as HHS Secretary. And Becerra is an advocate for Medicare for all. So there. I think that's a pretty good statement. I know people are going to complain about, I don't know, he's not pure enough. Democrats are never pure enough. And apparently the right-wing mobsters that they allow are just, they are pure enough. Yeah, apparently. Prosperity gospel prospers overall. What's on the rest of the menu here? In the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Well, as I alluded to at the top, a sizable number of U.S. citizens are unable to answer the citizenship questions on the citizenship test. So Trump just made the test harder for new immigrants trying to become citizens because, hey, he and Stephen Miller do not like brown people or anybody coming into this country. I wonder why. Does it start with an F? And end with a T? Maybe. On the rest of the menu, Iowa awarded an emergency contact tracing bid to a company owned by a Republican insider who donated big time to Trump's campaign. See? That's pure enough. Right-wing killer Kyle Rittenhouse's belligerent right-wing lawyer was forced to withdraw as counsel over significant ethical concerns. Interesting. Why won't they get rid of the Sidney Powell before she files like her 60th motion? Yeah, we'll see. And Biden picked Medicare for All advocate California Attorney General Xavier Becerra to be his health secretary and oversee the administration's coronavirus response. And Fauci's going to keep running the National Institute of Health, too. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where the United Arab Emirates was the target of cyber attacks after establishing formal ties with Israel. And the European Union is ready to make good on its sanctions threat against Turkey. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. At netrootsradio.com. Off to the rightish of the page is our chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of the chat room link near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the link to our Patreon page. And I want to give a big thank you to those of you who have offered us some recurring donations of a sizable amount the last couple of months, and it has really helped, especially since the big bills for the yearly subscriptions to all of the attendance software needed to run the station and broadcast it come due this month, as well as the fact that we are in the process of purchasing newish machinery and getting its attendant software to get it up and ready. And we have 2 machines to purchase. So hopefully this MacBook, this broadcasting actually will continue. It's more of a desktop now rather than a laptop, unfortunately, since it its battery doesn't really work properly, but it still works. And so we're still putting it through its paces, and we thank you for those recurring contributions monthly. Now, for those of you out there, I know this is a tough time, so when you're able, if you are able at some point in the future to send us the equivalent of what you might spend on an espresso-type coffee drink, if you could send that to us once a month, well, we are then able to pay our bills and we are able to fly under the radar. And it looks like we're going to need some liberal resistance radio against this burgeoning right-wing tidal wave of fascism that wants to overtake our society and our body politic, and we will not allow it. We won't. So we're here doing our civic duty because, well, I don't know, our love for our neighbor and our nation is stronger than just, I don't know, going to the mall. Are there still malls? I don't know. I've been locked in for so long. Are there still malls? Anyway, thank you for those recurring donations, and we thank you preemptively for considering doing so in the future. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, it is so simple. Tom takes care of it, and you can find us at Netroots Radio. Thank you, Tom. Makes it so simple. You can follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam, and you might as well follow me there because that's where I mostly post stuff for the show and the station and whatnot. And so, yes, I also post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime, and that includes the Justice Department on Sunday nights, the music show. Look for that podcast, too. I put that out on Twitter and social media. So for West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, 10 minutes before showtime, get that out on social media for your social media perusal. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West and pick up podcasts, by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., 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 etc. Before we dive into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays, I just want to mention or give a big thank you to those who reached out to me yesterday or over the weekend. We'll just say over the weekend. I was feeling a bit weepy between the lockdown and the holidays. You get a little bit of, it's not really cabin fever, but you know what I mean. The holidays are usually fraught with a certain amount of concern or consideration that can cause people to not be so happy and celebratory. In my case, it's going to be the second year anniversary of my son's passing on December 30th. 31st. I'm sorry. Yeah. No, the 30th, because it was right. See, what's wrong with me? December 30th, just before New Year's Eve. So that's is what it is. Anyway, I will say the second year is maybe a little bit easier because I've gone through all of those first. I mean, all of the holidays and the birthday and the kids being born and their birthdays and graduations and just all of that. All of that had to be experienced for the first time. But that doesn't mean necessarily that it ameliorates all of the grief for any dates and talismans and demarcations that happen to come up presently and in the future. And for some reason, I got weepy over the weekend. And yeah, maybe if I want to beat myself up a little bit, I would say that I was feeling sorry for myself. And I was, because I miss my son. It is about me. I wish that he was here. And but at some point, and I will say, with help from you out there, it passed, and I know it will. One of the great things about experimenting with all sorts of, at the time they were illicit substances, is I learned early on, never make a long-term decision when you're, like out of your brain. Don't ever do that. So I never make long-term decisions whenever I'm depressed or down in the dumps or weepy about my son no longer being on this plane of existence. And so everything passes, give it a few hours, give it a day, give it a week, whatever it takes, it all passes, and just continue working. I am of this belief that work can be therapeutic, whatever it is. The old Buddhist practice that when you're sweeping the floor, that's the most important thing that you can be doing in the world at that moment. Well, sometimes it can be an 8-count breath, a meditative device to contemplate and maybe quiet oneself inside. Also, having conversations inside your head's not a good idea. Don't do it. It's a waste of time, really. All right, let's dive into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Did I tell you it's River City Ash Mondays? Of course I did. Ryan J. Foley of the Associated Press brings us this first offering. After facing a workforce shortage for months, Iowa awarded an emergency $2.3 million contact tracing contract. That's hard to say. That's why I said bid. Okay. To a company that has worked for the campaigns of Donald Trump and Governor Kim Reynolds and is owned by a Republican insider. Oh, I'm shocked. I'm absolutely shocked. The Iowa Department of Public Health selected Iowa City-based MCI for the 2-month contract out of 14 applicants, saying it submitted the best proposal and that its political connections were not considered because, when you're giving money, that's not political. That's just business. Okay? So we're clear. The company is expected to supply 200 contact tracers. Oh, really? To get information on people and send them Republican mailers? Is that what you're going to do? And to supplement the hundreds of public health workers who have failed to keep up with Iowa's fast-growing virus caseload, as if it's their fault. Please. The first 60 graduated training and were beginning state work on Friday last. MCI had pitched its services to Iowa officials since the beginning of the pandemic and says it does contact tracing and management in 6 other states, including Alabama and Louisiana, so they are getting information for the Republican National Committee. MCI is owned by GOP donor Anthony Marlowe. That says it all right there. Who has boasted that it played a key role in Trump's 2016 victory and was among the state's top backers of Trump's unsuccessful re-election bid. I told you. They're getting info for their voters that they can, maybe brainwash some more. The contract, awarded after an expedited 2-day bidding process, lasts only through January and will pay the company $36,400 daily, and I doubt that's going to the employees. Marlowe was an Iowa delegate to the RNC in August who spoke during the roll call vote as the state supported Trump's renomination. He said his company had grown from 400 employees to 2016 to 4,000. Thanks to Trump's explosive economic policies. Yeah, you get a bunch of money like that, you're just going to happen. MCI subsidiary Mass Markets has been paid $1 million by Trump's campaign for telemarketing and data services since 2016, campaign finance records show. Marlowe said in 2016 the company made 80 million calls to help Trump get out the vote. When you're a contact tracer, hiding under that, I guess you can get this information quite easily now. Interesting. The Republican governor's campaign paid MCI more than $18,000 for services between 2017 and 2019 to promote rally turnout, and Marlowe's firm has recently done work for the Republican Party of Iowa. Marlowe has become a major donor, giving more than $175,000 to Republican Party groups and candidates since 2017, including to Trump, Reynolds, and the state party. And his wife began working at the White House earlier this year, although the couple has since divorced. Anonymous worker bees at the Associated Press bring us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A California attorney for an Illinois 17-year-old accused of fatally shooting 2 people and wounding a third during a night of unrest in Wisconsin is extracting himself from his criminal defense after prosecutors raised ethical concerns about the lawyer. Indeed. Los Angeles civil lawyer, not civil rights lawyer, civil lawyer, John Pierce, has been at the forefront of the case of Kyle Rittenhouse, who was accused in the shootings during protests in Kenosha this summer. Pierce has also worked to help secure the $2 million bail for Rittenhouse, who was bound over last Thursday for trial. Kenosha County Assistant District Attorney Thomas Binger cited public records and news reports in his motion, alleging that Pierce has significant personal financial difficulties and should not be allowed to represent Rittenhouse because money that should be held in trust for the defendant may instead be used to repay Attorney Pierce's numerous creditors, like a pyramid scheme. Shortly after the motion was filed on Thursday, Pierce tweeted that he would take over all civil matters for Rittenhouse and would continue to raise funds for his defense. He said that Wisconsin attorney Mark Richard will handle the criminal case. Pierce and other conservatives have portrayed Rittenhouse as a patriot and urged supporters to donate to Fight Back Foundation to bolster his legal defense. Attorney Pierce's personal financial difficulties raise significant ethical concerns, especially when he has close ties to a substantial yet unregulated and unreported slush fund that is intended solely for the benefit of the defendant, Binger wrote in reference to the foundation. Binger argues that donations to Rittenhouse's legal defense should be held in trust as required of Wisconsin attorneys taking retainers to represent clients. As his legal representation shifts, the case against Rittenhouse is moving forward. A Kenosha County Court Commissioner found probable cause to proceed with the case and rejected a defense motion to dismiss a reckless endangerment and gun charge against Rittenhouse. He is also charged with homicide and attempted homicide for fatally shooting Joseph Rosenbaum and Anthony Huber and wounding Gage Grosskreutz on August 25th. The shooting happened during a night of unrest in Kenosha that followed the police shooting of Jacob Blake, a local black man who suffered paralyzing injuries. Ricardo Alonso Zaldivar, Michael Balsamo, and Jonathan Lemire of the Associated Press bring us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. President-elect Joe Biden has picked California Attorney General Xavier Becerra to be his health secretary, putting a defender of the Affordable Care Act in a leading role to oversee his administration's coronavirus response. Separately, Biden picked a Harvard infectious disease expert, Dr. Rochelle Walensky, to head the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. If confirmed by the Senate, you know what Moscow Mitch will do unless we're able to wrest control of the Senate by the runoff elections that's happening right now in Georgia. Will be the first Latino to head the Department of Health and Human Services, a $1 trillion-plus agency with 80,000 employees and a portfolio that includes drugs and vaccines, leading-edge medical research, and health insurance programs covering more than 130 million Americans. A portfolio? I think it's a mandate. Becerra, as the state California's top lawyer, has led the coalition of Democratic states defending Obamacare from the Trump administration's latest effort to overturn it. A legal case awaiting a Supreme Court decision next year. And you know how they feel about science and reason at the Supreme Court now. A former senior House Democrat, Becerra was all involved in steering the Obama health law through Congress in 2009 and 2010. At the time, he would tell reporters that one of his primary motivations was having tens of thousands of uninsured people in his Southern California district. Becerra has a lawyer's precise approach to analyzing problems and a calm demeanor. But overseeing the coronavirus response will be the most complicated task he has ever contemplated. By next year, the U.S. will be engaged in a mass vaccination campaign, the groundwork for which has been laid under the Trump administration. In other words, it's been sabotaged to not work at all, in this reporter's opinion. Although the vaccines appear very promising and no effort has been spared to plan for their distribution, it's impossible to tell yet how well things will go when it's time to get shots in the arms of millions of Americans. Indeed. Well, that brings us to our break. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, more Munchausen. Prior to a disturbing episode of The X-Files in the 90s, it's doubtful that Munchausen syndrome by proxy was known to anyone outside a small cadre of mental health professionals. Since then, though, it's become a go-to plot device. Think The Sixth Sense, Everything, Everything, or the series Sharp Objects. The movie Run opens with Diane, a tearful mother, briefly eyeing a premature baby in a hospital ward before the action fast-forwards 17 years to find Chloe, a well-adjusted but seriously disabled teen, living with Mom in a small town in Washington State. Chloe is awaiting college acceptance letters as she begins to notice little things and add them up. Mom's attention to mail delivery, discrepancies with her prescriptions, mysterious internet outages, etc. Director and screenwriter Anish Chaganty, who gave us 2018's well-received Searching, slowly ramps up Mom's crazy as Chloe is forced to take increasingly desperate action to save herself and expose Diane. Like most thrillers, one can question the timing of certain insights and the visibility of some twists, but make no mistake, there are jump tricks and things you won't see coming, plus a mildly devilish epilogue. Part of what drives this one are the performances of the two leads. Sarah Paulson continues her recent run of portrayals of unsettling women, and you'll admire the physicality of newcomer Kiera Allen playing the disabled Chloe until you admire her even more after finding out that she really is disabled, making her the first actress since Susan Peters in 1948 to star in a film from a wheelchair. While thriller aficionados might have some gripes around the edges, Run hasn't become the most viewed movie ever on its exclusive platform Hulu without reason. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at take2moviereview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Julia Rosen. To us humans, climate change feels like something that's happening to the atmosphere. But most of the action is actually at sea. About 90% of the heat that gets trapped by greenhouse gases is absorbed by the ocean.
So it's really important to track that energy in the climate system and track the warming of the ocean.
Jörn Kallis, an oceanographer at Caltech. Of course, the ocean is really big, and taking its temperature is hard. Satellites give information about the surface, and scientists have launched drifting devices that measure conditions in the upper mile of water. But researchers still struggle to collect data from the deep ocean and to detect the long-term trends underlying day-to-day variations in temperature. Now, however, scientists have developed a new technique that allows them to measure temperature changes across entire ocean basins. The idea dates back to the 1970s, when researchers first proposed using sound waves to study ocean warming, because the speed of sound through water depends on the physical properties of that water, which are related to temperature.
And roughly, if we warm up the ocean temperature by 1 degree, the sound speed change, it would be 4 meters per second. And this is a very sensitive change.
Wenbo Wu, a seismologist also at Caltech who led the study. That 1 degree he mentioned is a Celsius degree. Researchers originally proposed using artificial sound sources, but that notion got nixed because of concerns about the impacts on marine animals. In the new study, however, Wu, Kallis, and their colleagues show that they can use the sounds produced by earthquakes instead. In an earthquake, some vibrations bounce off the seafloor and turn into sound waves that get picked up by seismometers and underwater microphones. The researchers looked at the travel times of these sound waves for 2,000 pairs of earthquakes that occurred in the East Indian Ocean between 2005 and 2016. Each earthquake pair happened in the same place but at different times, allowing the researchers to measure how much the sound waves sped up. The analysis revealed that the waves traveled a few tenths of a second faster in more recent quakes than older ones, a difference that translates to a warming trend of 0.04 degrees Celsius per decade. 4/100ths of a degree may not sound like a lot, but it represents a huge amount of heat, considering it's the change in a body of water almost 2,000 miles wide and several miles deep. The warming is also substantially higher than the rate reported in previous studies, although Kallis says not to put too much stock in those discrepancies.
We don't know whether that is the general finding, whether that only occurs here in this region at this time, or whether that is something we'll find in other regions as well. We just don't have the data yet.
The study is in the journal Science. Kallis and Wu say this approach may even enable scientists to gauge historical temperature changes by studying data from much older earthquakes. In other words, you could say that the method is sound. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Julia Rosen.
This is an important message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. When it snows this winter, make sure you clear more than your driveway. Before you hit the road and before you get in the driver's seat, check to be sure that your vehicle's tailpipe is clear of snow. If the tailpipe is blocked, carbon monoxide, an odorless, colorless, and deadly gas produced by your engine can build up quickly inside your vehicle, poisoning anyone inside. To learn more, call 1-800-CDC-INFO. That's 1-800-232-4636.
He seemed sorry. We very clearly told him not to look up there.
I'm honestly impressed that he was able to do it.
Right? But did he balance on that big chair? Or...
Yeah, I mean, I guess he'll just know what his gifts are this year.
I really thought we had hidden them well.
If they can find their presents, they can find a gun.
911, what is your emergency?
Every day, 8 kids and teens are unintentionally killed or injured by loaded and unlocked guns. Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and End Family Fire.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
In the long run, do Donald Trump's attacks on the election results matter?
I'm Tom Hartman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute with ACLU attorney Bill Newman.
In the 2020 election, in the popular vote, Joe Biden beat Donald Trump by nearly 7 million votes. But in the United States, unlike other democracies, the popular vote does not decide the election. Rather, the anti-democratic Electoral College does that, which means the result of a presidential election can be determined by changing the result in a single state. For example, Florida in 2000 in Bush versus Gore. Or by changing the outcome in a handful of states, which in 2020 is what the Trump campaign has tried to do, by filing dozens and dozens of lawsuits, which is completely legal, in the swing states he lost, losing those challenges time after time with judges tossing the cases for utter lack of any evidence of any fraud or election irregularities. But the Trump cases have succeeded in one very important court, the court of public opinion. Repetition of voter fraud and stolen election has resulted in a significant minority of the electorate reporting that they believe those utterly unfounded and spurious claims. But perception matters. Unwarranted distrust about election results undermines people's belief in the legitimacy of their government, which is an essential element of democracy. How long the damage will last and what form it will take remain undecided.
The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't defend itself.
The U.S. Department of Agriculture. What is it and why does it matter? Created in 1862 by Abraham Lincoln to be what he called the People's Department, today this little-known agency has enormous tools and resources to restore fairness and opportunity across America's countryside. It has major anti-monopoly authority, controls huge rural development and housing programs, runs food stamps, school lunch, and other nutrition programs, has responsibility for pesticide regulations, directs the Forest Service and numerous other environmental programs, has sweeping civil and labor rights responsibilities, wields a $151 billion annual budget, has 100,000 employees, and an office in every county in America. And, most powerfully, the Secretary has broad authority to be a national advocate for the people against the corporate plutocracy now controlling policy. Ag Secretary is a big office, but tools only work if you use them. President-elect Biden rightly promised to restore trust that our national government will serve the public interest rather than continuing policies that abet oligarchic power and increase inequality. Here is a clear test of that promise. Instead of recycling another old-line agribusiness acolyte into USDA, Biden must be pushed to make a progressive choice for Secretary of Agriculture, someone unencumbered by financial or political ties to the status quo, willing to practice what Representative John Lewis called getting into good trouble, necessary trouble. This is Jim Hightower saying, at minimum, the next Secretary of Agriculture should pledge to rally family farmers, workers, consumers, rural communities, and urban neighborhoods in a common effort to break the corporate stranglehold and turn USDA into the People's Department again.
If you'd like more of Jim Hightower's real populism, check out the Hightower Lowdown. Jim's monthly newsletter gives you the real lowdown on which corporations, by name, are doing what to the middle class, our environment, and our democracy. Each month, the Hightower Lowdown brings you facts you didn't know, along with actions you can take to fight back. It also comes with a sense of humor. Hightower believes we can fight the gods and still have fun. Plus, get this, it's cheap. Only $15 brings you 12 issues a year. For real populism, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1907. That was the day that troops from the 22nd Infantry arrived in Goldfield, Nevada, on the orders from President Teddy Roosevelt. 1,900 gold miners organized by the Western Federation of Miners were on strike. They walked out in late November when cash-strapped mine operators began paying them in scrip. Local 77 held considerable power in the mines and the town for 2 years. They had won the 8-hour day both for their members and established it as an industrial standard throughout Goldfield. By 1907, the mine operators and Nevada Governor John T. Sparks had had enough. Wobblies were on trial elsewhere, falsely accused of murdering Idaho Governor Frank Stautenberg for his role in the 1899 miner strike in Coeur d'Alene. Many miners in Goldfield had been active in that strike. Sparks feared that with no force capable of protecting the operators, another mine war was inevitable. The mine owners convinced Sparks that the miners were heavily armed and capable of dynamiting mine property. At the same time, the operators tried to provoke local 77 miners to engage in illegal activities for which they could be arrested. They also used the financial panic of 1907 to pay workers in scrip and as a pretext to smash the union, even though the gold standard remained relatively stable. The owners then made their moves. They reduced wages and threatened workers with mass firings and strikebreakers. But the union remained disciplined and peaceful during the strike. It was clear by the following March that the presence of federal troops gave the mine owners the impetus they needed to drive local 77 miners out of the mines and out of Goldfield.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook Speakeasy. River City Hash Mondays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 37 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting a high in the upper 40s, low 50s, sunshine with clouds mixed, winds light and variable, though we had that same sort of forecast yesterday and it was dreary all day. A few clouds overnight with lows in the upper 30s, winds light and variable, partly cloudy skies tomorrow. Highs, they say, in the mid-50s with winds light and variable. And tomorrow, Tuesday late, we should start accumulating a bit of cloud cover for rain happening late overnight tomorrow night. And, late tomorrow night. And then it looks like a week or more of rain every day. We'll see how that turns out. Confirmed coronavirus cases in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon. This number stands only as a partial count from the weekend. We'll get updated totals later today and will be reported tomorrow. But the confirmed cases have now spiked to 4,028 with 38 confirmed deceased. And as I keep mentioning, at least for the deceased part, we know for certain that those are gross undercounts. Pollen is rated at none right outside the window at the here at the mothership, but I'm sneezing for some reason, so maybe it's inside the mothership. The air quality index for the region is good at 25 parts per million, and the daytime UV index currently is low at 1. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.42 inches. Visibility is at 8 miles, and relative humidity is at 95%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 37 with haze. Paris is 41 and mostly cloudy. Rome is 54 and partly cloudy. Kyiv is 20 degrees and fair. Kabul is 39 with a light rain shower. Hong Kong is 64 and fair. Tokyo is 48 and clear. Sydney, Australia is 68 degrees and fair. San Francisco, California is 58 degrees and sunny. And New York is a brisk 35 degrees Fahrenheit and fair. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. Anonymous worker bees, this time at Reuters, bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The United Arab Emirates was the target of cyber attacks after establishing formal ties with Israel, the Gulf Arab state's cybersecurity head said yesterday, Sunday. The UAE in August broke with decades of Arab policy when it agreed to forge ties with Israel in a move that angered Palestinians and some Muslim states and communities. Bahrain and Sudan have followed suit. Our relationship, for example, with the normalization with Israel really opened a whole huge attacks from some other activists against the UAE, the minister said during an onstage interview at a conference in Dubai. Kuwait said the financial sector was targeted but did not elaborate. He also told the conference that the number of cyber attacks in the UAE increased sharply after the start of the coronavirus pandemic. He also said that traditionally many attacks in the region originate from Iran without specifying who is behind them. Iran has also said that it has been a victim of hacking as well.
Je te donne, c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mais automne, quand les feuilles tombent partout, si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Robin Emmett of Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. EU foreign ministers will evaluate grounds for sanctions against Turkey over a Mediterranean gas dispute before the bloc's leaders decide whether to make good on their threat to impose punitive measures. Turkey's move in late November to return a seismic exploration vessel to port has calmed tension, but EU officials and diplomats said broader issues over Libya, Syria, Russia, and authoritarianism in Turkey have hardened EU positions. The EU says Turkish drill and survey ships have continued to work in waters contested by Greece and Cyprus, which Greece says makes formal talks with Turkey over maritime claims impossible. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day. But you do know Netroots Radio will broadcast on, and we're going to meet up tomorrow for Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.